Well, welcome, real estate fans, to another episode of Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I'm Dan Edwards, your host with Eastside Real Estate Team and the Seattle Real Estate Team, providing you the inside scoop on living, working, and playing across the greater Seattle area, including the Eastside. It is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024, and we're coming to you live Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So I'm glad you're here. This is going to be a great show. We've got some great content, great conversation. You're welcome to like or subscribe. You can see if you're on YouTube, there's a there. Also, I'll see your comments too. So if you have any comments, questions, or thoughts, send them over. We'll try and address them in real time. Today's topic is, we've got several really good topics that I think that you will find interesting and engaging. And let's see. So we're going to have myself with a Real Talk segment. We're going to be talking about the NAR settlement. Then we're going to talk about assumable loans. This is my favorite topic. Fool's gold, or is it a gold mine? Assumable loans, right? There's a lot of people out there with loans. We're going to talk with our good friend Tucker Maxwell about those assumable loans and what's going on in that world. And then a good friend of mine, Rob Young, with Oasis Senior Advisors, is here to share insights about that transition that many boomers are going through right now and how he can help. So we're going to have a great show. Before we get to that, I am going to welcome our good friend Tucker to the show. Tucker, welcome in. How are you?
I'm great, Dan. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hey, you said it's a crazy market out there. Tell me a crazy story.
Multiple offers.
Yeah.
So just the recent one that's on the top of my head, single family home in Tacoma, Washington, or not even Tacoma, Seward Park. So South King County on the south end of Lake Washington with views. Listed at $850, had clients offer $950 with very little contingencies and a 2-week close, and didn't win.
Did not win. So 100,000 above asking, didn't win. Yeah. There's definitely a lot going on out there with that. Well, hey, everybody in the world, everybody and their brother sent me some kind of poster article about this one. And I thought, there's a rule, and I don't know what this. Oh, actually, wait, before we do this, we got to do the cool bumper music. So our Real Talk segment starts now. And I wonder how loud that is, because to me, it's really freaking loud. Is that loud to you?
It's loud on my end as well.
Okay. I might need to adjust the volume down a bit. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? So my buddy sent me this last week, breaking: the National Association of Realtors is eliminating 6% realtor commission. Here's everything you need to know. And then he went on to say a bunch of things that were quite honestly not true. Misleading at best. So here's you can definitely chime in on this here, but let me just kind of outline how this kind of went down. And I want to be real careful. Here's the thing: is in my entire career, I have always had my commission be something that is negotiable. I believe in earning the opportunity, and in the lack of value. When you offer a product or service, when it lacks value, then price is the only other consideration. So I always try to provide value. But let me give you some short Washington state history on this, and then I'll tell you where that headline is misleading at the very end. So Washington state in the early 90s created a situation where, prior to the early 90s, let me actually rephrase this. Prior to the 90s, all agents in every real estate transaction were a representative of the seller. The mechanism was not in place for there to be buyer representation. So that entered the scene in the early 90s, where we created this idea of having a representative that owed a level of confidentiality and fiduciary duty to the buyer. And that's when buyer agency was first created in Washington state. So as a whole, though, that started to evolve into the mid to late 2000s, where many people were saying, hey, there's a commission here, and I want a credit back from that commission, says the buyer, and I would like to negotiate that. And so as the market was driving this, the Northwest MLS made some decisions. What they decided to do was decouple the requirement in 2019 to that the seller has to pay a buyer agency commission. So it's a super complicated like situation. But the fact of the matter is this case that came against NAR was accusing the National Association of Realtors of colluding in pricing and artificially keeping home prices high. So that's the premise. And again, I'm not a legal expert. I sell real estate. So I'm going to say that's the present. That is the case as I see it. Now, I want to bring you in on this, Tucker, a little bit because, from the time being there's money being exchanged, but what is your take on how people have seen this NAR lawsuit or settlement?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it from inside of Washington State and outside of Washington State. I think nationwide, there hasn't been the same level of transparency and commission that we have and we're fortunate to have in Washington. It's always, front and center on a purchase and sale agreement. It's in the NWMLS, which is the local listing service. They've advertised the commission. And so it has been something that buyers and sellers have been aware of. So I feel that we've had some forethought that we need to be transparent in this. We need to have it be a conversation between the professional and the consumer. And so I think we're well ahead of this in Washington State.
Yeah, I would say early on when this was on the table, the agreements actually were signed with the seller stating that they are going to pay a certain amount of commission and that the listing brokerage is then going to share that with a buyer broker. And so that was an agreement between the seller and the seller and the brokerage that represents the seller. That's kind of where it ended, and so it created this kind of confusion, if you will, because a buyer is saying, "Well, hey, I'd like you to credit that commission to me," and we're saying, "Well, that agreement is between us and the seller, not between you." And so we adapted. We actually did change in Washington State, and how we changed it is we said, "Okay, great, we're going to move stuff over into your spot, buyer." And we're going to say you hire a buyer agent and you tell them how much you'd like to pay them. And if the seller is offering a commission to the buyer's agent, credit it against what you agreed to pay them, therefore eliminating a cost for them. So it becomes something that's negotiated. And you're seeing that on contracts, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's something that as a lender, we need to be very much aware of so that we're calculating cash to close correctly. In terms of does our buyer have to make up any difference in that commission being offered on the terms of the deal?
That's right. Because correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if a lender is looking at that and there's too much cash coming out of a buyer's pocket, it could create a situation where they can't get the loan, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but when you see a headline like this, right, it's just saying, okay, National Association of Realtors is eliminating 6% realtor commission. The National Association of Realtors never, ever said to me, and I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't believe it was in their charter that there was a 6% commission. So that headline right there, wrong. It's incorrect. What was the caveat in the realtor deal was that they had to offer the seller had to offer a commission to the buyer. So it was the requirement of a cooperating broker commission that was at the crux of it, and really that is what drove it. And I can tell you, I've had 18 years in the business, and nobody has ever told me how much to charge somebody. So that number, and the other thing is the conclusion that it adds is this could lead to a 30% reduction in commissions, driving down home prices across the board. So 30% of a reduction in commissions. So that's 1 percentage point. So 1 percentage point is going to drive down home prices. So it's very, it's basically clickbait. It's kind of funny because, what's our biggest problem in the housing market today, Tucker?
Inventory.
And so because of inventory, we have $100,000 above asking. Now, is that because of the agent commission or is that because of the inventory?
It's inventory and, the desirability of the property. I really think it's going to do the opposite. I think it's unfortunately going to probably raise prices because it's really going to come over to our side of the transaction because now we have for what's really interesting about this is at the same time Biden in his State of the Union talks about homebuyer grants and doing these new initiatives to try to give incentives to buyers to help with the major problem for buyers is cash to close, down payment funds. So now we're saying, hey, buyer, on top of these fees and this down payment that you've struggled to come up with traditionally, we now potentially have more fees to add to your plate. And so what's going to end up happening is we're going to start putting this in and we're going to say, hey, okay, buyer, you have to cover this. So offer the seller a higher price so that way we can get closing cost credit and get it back, right? We're just going to move the numbers around to ultimately come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, and the other option a buyer has is to go with somebody who's offering less commission. In my experience, if you're going to hire somebody to do a job, especially one around $500,000 in this area more, don't you want to make sure you have somebody that's really good at what they do? And I have nothing against, somebody figuring out how they want to expense, charge somebody for their product. But, across the board, I can get a cup of coffee at McDonald's, or I can buy a cup of coffee at Woods Coffee. Both are coffee. The experience is different,
Totally.
right? So I think that for agents in the marketplace, it's about knowing your value. I mean, if you were just a buyer's agent who let them pick the house and didn't consult on it and all that stuff, maybe you charge a little less, right? Maybe you do. But if you're somebody that's actively calling neighborhoods in order to bird dog a house for your client, you need to show that value. And I think that there are going to be different types of consumers that decide to work with different people different ways. And it really does come down to, in the absence of value, price is everything. But to have this idea that somehow it's going to impact the housing prices, that's just a joke. It's like a butterfly up, wings affecting a hurricane, So all right. Well, so anyways, if you have more questions, if you have thoughts, hey, put them in the comments section. Love to hear everybody's opinion about this. I know that it's not going to change how I do business. It's super important for me, for my clients, to have a 5-star experience. We're always going to make sure we provide the best value for the price. That's how we're going to roll. As always, my commissions are negotiable. So that's on the record. All right. Well, that concludes our Real Talk segment. Tucker, thanks for your input on that. I really appreciate it. We're going to take a short commercial.